Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a big one, the deadlift.
Absolutely. It's this incredible lift, builds power, confidence.
But yeah, it also carries this risk, right? If you get it wrong, the potential for, well, pretty serious injury is there.
Definitely.
So our mission today, it's not about just throwing out those, surface level cues like keep your back straight.
No, vague advice doesn't cut it. We need to go deeper.
Exactly. We're diving into the anatomy, the real nuts and bolts of your spine. We want you to understand the physics, the compression forces, how those discs work.
And why that structure, that spinal architecture, is so critical when you're pulling hundreds of pounds off the floor.
Understanding it keeps you lifting, keeps you healthy.
And this deep dive, it's just so essential for anyone serious about getting stronger. The spine, it's everything. It's the foundation.
The chassis, yeah.
Exactly, the chassis. And we can't just look at the bones, the discs, the nerves like they're separate parts in a textbook. It's a system, a really complex, high-stakes system designed to handle huge vertical forces.
And mismanaging that system. It's not just about being a bit sore the next day.
Oh, no. We're talking structural failure. We're talking about injuries that could sideline you for months, maybe even years, requiring serious rehab.
Yikes.
Yeah. So understanding the engineering helps prevent that catastrophe. It's about safety through knowledge.
It really boils down to longevity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to do this for the long haul.
Precisely.
And to help visualize this, we've got a couple of core analogies we're going to explore today. These really capture the spine's strength, but also its vulnerability.
The jelly donut and the credit card.
Exactly. We need to get why those crucial intervertebral discs are kind of like jelly donuts.
And what happens when you treat your spine like a credit card? You just keep bending back and forth under stress.
Until it just snaps. That's the failure point we absolutely have to avoid.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's start with the blueprint, the spine's architecture.
Let's do it.
The first big misconception, I think, is seeing the spine as just this single rigid rod, like an I-beam or something.
Right. Just brace it and hold it still.
Okay.
But that's not how it works at all.
No. When you actually look at the anatomy, it's way more complex. It's this dynamic column, curved, made up of 33 separate bones, vertebrae.
And for lifting, for understanding the deadlift, we really need to break it down into its three main functional regions, the movable regions.
Because where the stress goes depends entirely on which part we're talking about.
That segmentation is absolutely key to understanding the risks involved. If you look at the spine from the side, you see those curves, right?
Yeah, the natural curves.
Those curves exist because of the segmentation. So let's start at the top. The cervical spine, that's your neck.
7 vertebrae there.
7 vertebrae, C1 to C7. Now, like the source material says, this isn't usually the main player, deadlift injuries, but
it still matters. Your head position, right?
Exactly. If your head's cranked way back, looking up at the ceiling, or tucked way down, chin to chest,
it throws everything else off down the line.
it creates a cascade effect.
All right.
It pulls the thoracic spine, the mid-back, and even the lumbar spine, the lower back, out of their best, strongest positions. So alignment really starts right up top with the head.
Okay. Moving down from the neck.
We hit the thoracic spine, your mid-back. This is a bigger section, 12 vertebrae, T1 to T12.
And you said this bit is crucial, but often kind of overlooked in lifting cues.
Massively overlooked.
Yeah.
And it's critical because it's where your ribs attach. It anchors the rib cage, providing this inherent stability.
But the problem is modern life, sitting too much.
Precisely. All that hunching over desks, over phones, it tends to make this area really stiff, really rigid, especially in deflection, that rounded position.
Okay, so the T-spine gets stiff and stuck, kind of rounded forward. Why is that such a disaster for the deadlift?
Because the thoracic spine needs to be able to extend slightly for a good deadlift setup. It needs to arch back just a little bit.
Ah, to let you get your chest up and shoulders back.
Exactly. That thoracic extension is what lets you set up in a strong hinge position while keeping your lower back neutral and safe. If your T-spine is locked up and kyphotic, just rounded,
You physically can't get into the right starting position.
you can't. You can't get the proper spinal angle. You can't set your shoulders and chest correctly over the bar. It's a mechanical impossibility if it's too stiff.
Okay, so if the T-spine won't move, won't extend because, you've been sitting hunched over all day.
The body's smart, in a way. It still needs to get down to the bar, so it has to find that movement from somewhere else.
And where does it steal that movement from?
Yeah, is right. It forces that movement directly into the lumbar spine. Your lower back, this is the danger zone.
The L-spine. Just 5 vertebrae down there, right? L1 to L5.
Just 5, but they're big ones. They're designed for stability, for bearing huge compressive loads. That's their job.
But they're not designed for.
They're absolutely not designed for the excessive bending, the flexion, that gets forced on them when a stiff T-spine refuses to cooperate.
So the immobile mid-back makes the lower back buckle under the pressure.
During the setup, during the lift itself, that's where you see that classic dangerous rounding of the lower back. It's the exact mechanism of failure we're trying so hard to avoid.
Wow. It really is a system failure, isn't it? Weakness in one area directly compromises another, the one taking the most load.
Perfectly put. The stiffness in the mid-back directly leads to instability and excessive strain in the low back, right where the forces are highest.
Okay, now, quick detour. The math. You said 33 vertebrae total, but we've only covered 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar. That's 24.
Right. 24 movable vertebrae.
So where are the other 9, and why aren't they part of this immediate risk discussion for, like, disc injuries?
Yeah, that's a great point of clarification. It really defines the scope of the risk we're talking about. Those 24 we covered are the movable ones.
Meaning they have discs between them.
Exactly. They're separated by those intervertebral discs, which are the vulnerable shock absorbers. The other 9 vertebrae are actually fused together. They don't move independently.
Fused. Okay, walk us through those.
Sure. So right below L5, the last lumbar vertebra, you have the sacrum.
Okay.
The sacrum is this large triangular bone. It's actually formed from 5 vertebrae that fuse together completely during development into one solid piece of bone.
And it connects to the pelvis.
It forms the back wall of the pelvis, yeah. Its job is critical for transferring load from the spine down into the hips and legs. But the key thing is it doesn't flex or extend on its own. It doesn't have discs between its fused segments that can bulge or herniate.
Okay, so stability, load transfer, but not movement or disc whisk.
Yeah.
And below the sacrum.
Right at the very bottom, you have the coccyx, the tailbone.
Ah, the tailbone.
That's typically 4 tiny vertebrae also fused together. Doesn't bear significant load in the same way.
So what here is that the sacrum and coccyx are vital for providing that stable base, connecting spine to hips.
Absolutely. Foundational stability.
But because they're fused, no discs in between, they aren't where we see those typical deadlift injuries like herniated discs occurring.
Correct. The risk of disc injury, the kind caused by compression and flexion under load, is concentrated in those 24 movable vertebrae.
Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, that's where the action and the danger lies.
Precisely. Those are the dynamic segments. And it's the discs sitting between those 24 bones that really demand our full respect and really careful attention to form.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So let's pivot now from the bones, the architecture, to the biology within that architecture, those intervertebral discs.
Yes. This is where the vulnerability really becomes clear. These are the cushions, the shock absorbers, the spacers between those movable vertebrae.
And this is where the jelly donut analogy comes in. You said it's the best visualization.
It really is quite good for understanding the basic structure and function. A disc is essentially this sophisticated biological cushion, 2 main parts.
Okay.
On the outside, you have the annulus fibrosus. Think of this as the donut itself, the tough outer breading.
Great container.
Exactly. It's made of maybe 15 to 25 concentric rings or layers of incredibly strong collagen fibers, like layered belts.
And you mentioned something about the pattern of those fibers being important.
Crucial. Think of it like woven fabric, or maybe like the plies in a tire. The collagen fibers in each layer run diagonally.
Okay.
But they run in the opposite direction to the fibers in the layer directly above and below it.
Ah, like a cross-hatching?
Precisely, a crosshatch pattern. And this structure makes the annulus incredibly strong at resisting rotational forces, like twisting, and also shear forces, which try to slide the vertebrae back and forth. It's designed to contain what's inside.
Nature's radial tire.
Yeah, something like that. Remarkable engineering.
Okay, so that's the tough outside. What's the jelly in the middle?
That's the nucleus pulposus. This is the core. It's gel-like, viscoelastic, mostly water actually, held in a matrix of proteoglycans and some collagen.
And its job is hydraulic.
Essentially, yes. When the spine is neutral, properly aligned, and you apply compressive load straight down.
Like during a good deadlift.
Right. That nucleus behaves like a hydraulic fluid. It distributes the pressure outwards, radially, against the inner wall of that tough annulus.
Okay.
And this turns the whole disc unit into this firm, pressurized hydraulic cushion. It resists that vertical compression beautifully, absorbs shock perfectly.
Okay, that's the ideal scenario. Neutral spine, even compression, happy disc. Now, failure.
Right.
What happens when we crush that jelly donut unevenly? Which, as you said, is exactly what happens when the back rounds during a heavy deadlift.
That uneven pressure, that's the start of the problem. When a lifter rounds their back, especially the lumbar spine, the
Yeah.
front edges of the vertebrae pinch together, crushing the front part of the disc incredibly hard. This creates what engineers call an anterior shear force.
Okay, crushing the front.
And that intense pressure on the front side hydraulically drives that gel-like nucleus backward with immense force. It leverages it directly against the back wall of the annulus.
So the jelly is trying to escape out the back, and
That's where your spinal cord and nerve roots are located, running right behind the discs.
not good. So what's the process of failure? Does the annulus just pop?
It's usually more gradual, a process of fatigue failure, especially at its repeated loading.
Yeah.
That backward pressure starts to damage the annulus layers from the inside out.
Okay.
The collagen fibers start to delaminate, they stretch, they tear. Initially, you might just get a slight bulge. The nucleus pushes the weakened outer layers back a bit.
Still contained but bulging.
Right. If the stress continues or the load is high enough, you can get a protrusion. Where the bulge is more significant, the wall is clearly deformed.
Getting worse.
And then the worst case is an extrusion or a rupture. That's a true herniation. The nucleus material actually breaks through all the layers of the annulus wall and leaks out into the space behind the disc.
Wow. The jelly has escaped the donut.
The jelly is out, and it's now physically pressing on, or chemically irritating, a nerve root exiting the spinal cord.
And that's why a herniated disc isn't just, as the source said, not fun. That's debilitating pain.
Absolutely debilitating. When that nuclear material hits a nerve root, the pain isn't just in your back.
Right? It radiates.
It radiates. You get referred symptoms down the leg, shooting pain, numbness, tingling, weakness. That's radiculopathy.
Mm.
If it's the sciatic nerve affected, we call it sciatica.
It's the body screaming that you've fundamentally broken the rules.
It's the body's loudest, clearest signal. You have mechanically violated the architecture. If you don't respect the disc's mechanics, you pay a heavy price, often in nerve compression and chronic pain.
Okay, that paints a very vivid picture. And it sets us up perfectly to talk about the actual mechanical breakdown we see in the gym.
Right.
When form goes wrong, particularly in that lumbar region, this is where that credit card analogy really hits home.
Yeah, the credit card analogy helps us understand material fatigue under repeated stress or cyclic loading.
Okay.
You take a credit card, you bend it back and forth at the same spot. It usually doesn't snap on the first bend, right?
No, it gets weaker first. You might see a white line form.
Exactly. Microdamage accumulates. The plastic structure weakens internally. And then eventually, maybe even a small bend causes that final catastrophic snap.
And the same principle applies to our spine's tissues.
So the connective tissues, yes.
Yeah.
The discs, the ligaments, they aren't plastic, but they're subject to that same kind of fatigue failure when you repeatedly round your spine under heavy load.
It's not just one bad lift, necessarily. It can be the accumulation of many slightly off lifts.
Often, yes.
Mm.
And that poor mechanical position leads to three things happening all at once, three catastrophic effects that really define bad deadlift form.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, and we've touched on this, the disc pressure just goes through the roof, specifically the pressure pushing the nucleus backward.
Can we quantify that at all? Like, how much worse is it?
It's hard to give exact numbers, but studies using pressure sensors in discs show that flexion, rounding, dramatically increases posterior pressure compared to a neutral spine.
Mm.
When neutral, the load spreads over the whole disc surface and the vertebral end plates.
Oh.
When you round, the contact shifts to the front edges. That smaller contact area massively multiplies the pressure there, acting like a lever. It means the force needed to actually rupture the disc is way, way lower when you're rounded.
So maybe your neutral spine could handle, say, 500 pounds safely, but if you round even a little.
Suddenly, maybe only 300 pounds is enough to reach that failure point for the disc structure. It drastically lowers the safety margin.
Okay, skyrocketing disc pressure focused backward. What's the second catastrophic effect?
This involves the ligaments. People often forget the spine has these really strong ligaments running along it, acting like check straps.
Right, the passive restraints.
Exactly. You've got the posterior longitudinal ligament running down the back of the vertebral bodies, inside the spinal canal, and the ligamentum flavum, this thick, yellowish, elastic ligament connecting the vertebral arches behind the spinal cord.
Okay, what happens to those tough ligaments when you round your back hard under load?
They get stretched, violently stretched. Their job is to limit excessive motion. But They aren't designed to bear hundreds of pounds of direct tensile force when the spine is fully flexed like that.
So you're basically hanging the weight off your ligaments instead of your muscles.
In part, yes. Rounding pushes them way past their safe elastic limit. This can cause microscopic tears, inflammation, a ligament sprain, or even larger macroscopic tears in a really bad lift.
And once those ligaments are stretched or torn,
The spine loses crucial passive stability. It becomes inherently less stable, which means the muscles have to work even harder to control it. But the muscles are already in a bad position.
which leads perfectly into the third catastrophic effect, compromised muscle leverage.
Absolutely. When the
Yeah.
spine rounds, those big, powerful spinal erector muscles, the ones running vertically up your back like thick cables.
The longissimus, iliocostalis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys. They are designed to be powerful extensors. They pull your trunk upright and stabilize the spine when it's near neutral. That's their strength.
Oh, when you're rounded over.
When the spine is in deep flexion, their angle of pull changes completely. Their insertion points shift. Instead of pulling the spine powerfully into extension, they become almost ineffective.
They lose their mechanical advantage.
Totally. They might even contribute slightly to flexion in a very rounded position, or at best, they're stretched so much they can't generate force properly. They're essentially taken out of the equation as prime movers or primary stabilizers.
So you're attempting a maximal lift, but your main back muscles are functionally offline.
Pretty much. The load isn't being shared effectively by the erectors, the glutes, the hamstrings anymore.
Where does the load go then?
It gets concentrated brutally on those already compromised discs and ligaments, and maybe some smaller, deeper stabilizer muscles that aren't designed for that kind of prime mover work.
It's a recipe for disaster, a vicious cycle.
Exactly. Bad form compromises discs, which stretches ligaments, which deleverages the main muscles, making the next rep even riskier.
Okay. This detailed breakdown of how things fail gives us a really clear picture. Let's use this knowledge now to contract the practicals. Good form versus poor form.
Right. Let's translate the anatomy into action. Good form, fundamentally, is all about preserving that spinal architecture we've been talking about.
Job number 1, keep the spine neutral.
Absolutely non-negotiable. And again, neutral doesn't mean poker straight or flat. It means maintaining those natural, gentle curves, cervical, thoracic, lumbar, keeping them intact and braced under tension throughout the lift.
Okay, spine stays neutral. So where does the bending movement come from to reach the bar and lift it?
It comes from the hips. Good form is defined by a deep, proper hip hinge.
Pushing the hips back.
Pushing the hips way back like you're trying to touch a wall behind you with your butt. This allows your torso to tilt forward over the bar while your shins stay relatively vertical.
And that loads up the right muscles.
It loads the glutes and hamstrings correctly. Your glutes are the most powerful muscles you have. The hinge recruits them effectively to drive the lift, extending the hips powerfully.
So neutral spine, deep hip hinge. The result is good load distribution.
Perfect load distribution. The weight is shared across those powerhouse muscles. Glutes, hammies, and the spinal erectors are working isometrically, like tension cables, to hold that neutral spine, not trying to lift the weight themselves.
Plus the core is braced.
Core is braced hard, creating that intra-abdominal pressure IAP we'll talk more about, protecting the spine from the inside out. The outcome: high efficiency, maximum power, and importantly, minimal shear stress on the discs. Low risk of injury.
That's the goal. Now let's flip it. Poor form, which, based on everything we've said, is basically just ignoring the spine's design principles.
Pretty much. Poor form usually shows up as either significant rounding flexion or sometimes excessive hyperextension, arching too much, under load. Both violate neutrality.
Rounding seems the most common, though.
By far the most common, especially in the lumbar spine. And as we established, that rounding drives the nucleus backward toward the nerves.
And often, this happens because the hips aren't doing their job.
Often, yes. The lifter initiates the movement by bending the spine instead of hinging the hips. The hips stay too high, or the hinge is really shallow, maybe due to poor mobility, maybe just poor motor control.
So if the hips don't hinge, the bend has to come from the spine to reach the bar.
It has to. The body finds a way, and it chooses the path of least resistance, which is often flexing the spine.
And instead of the big leg and hip muscles doing the work?
The load gets dumped onto the passive structures of the low back. Those discs, those ligaments, they bear the brunt unsupported.
This is where that failure mechanism kicks in.
This is exactly where it starts. The disc crushing, the ligament stretching, the erectors being bypassed. The outcome here isn't strength. It's a dramatically increased risk of acute injury. The pop, the sudden pain, and also the slow, creeping development of chronic issues like degenerative disc disease.
So good form isn't just about looking right, it's structural longevity.
It is structural longevity. Poor form is basically just accepting eventual mechanical failure. There's no way around it.
That distinction, structural integrity versus mechanical failure, that's the key takeaway here. Neutral alignment isn't just a suggestion, it's the engineering requirement for safe power.
Couldn't say it better myself.
But this raises a really important, maybe uncomfortable question for a lot of people. Why does how I sit at my desk matter for a heavy lift I do maybe twice a week?
Ah, the million-dollar question. This ties everything together. It's perhaps the most critical point for your long-term spinal health as a lifter.
The desk and the deadlift connection.
Exactly. Your deadlift form is, in many ways, simply a reflection of your posture and movement habits outside the gym. You cannot realistically expect your body to snap into a perfect, powerful, neutral spine hinge under maximum load.
If you spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day actively training it to do the exact opposite while sitting slumped in a chair.
Precisely. You're grooving the wrong motor pattern for most of your waking hours.
Okay, let's trace that connection directly. How does typical slouching posture mess up the deadlift setup?
Okay, so when you slouch, typically your pelvis rolls backwards slightly, a posterior tilt. And your mid-back, that thoracic spine.
Rounds forward, kyphosis.
Deep kyphosis, yeah. And holding that position for hours on end, day after day. The connective tissues adapt. The muscles in the front of your chest and shoulders get tight. The muscles in your mid-back get lengthened and weak. And crucially, the joints and fascia of the T-spine itself get stiff. They lose their ability to extend.
And that stiffness is the trigger for the compensation loop you mentioned earlier.
It's the direct trigger. Because now, that T-spine is locked in a rounded position. You go to set up for your deadlift, you try to lift your chest, pull your shoulder blades back, create tension across your upper back.
And nothing happens. The
Yeah.
T-spine won't budge.
It just doesn't have the range of motion anymore. So your brain, needing to achieve the task, says, okay, fine, get the movement somewhere else.
And somewhere else is the lumbar spine.
Immediately. The lumbar spine, which should be held stable and neutral, is forced to flex excessively to make up for the lack of extension in the thoracic spine.
So you're literally using your low back vertebrae, the ones under the most load, to compensate for stiffness in your mid-back that you developed sitting at work.
That's exactly it. It's a direct pathway to overloading the lumbar structures. And it's not just the T-spine.
What else does sitting do?
Prolonged sitting also chronically shortens your hip flexors, especially the psoas muscle, which runs from your lumbar spine down to your femur.
Okay, tight hip flexors.
Tight hip flexors can physically restrict your ability to fully extend your hips. They can also neurologically inhibit your glutes from firing properly, something called reciprocal inhibition.
So tight hip flexors can actually make your glutes weaker or harder to activate.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
And they can limit how deep you can actually hinge at the hips, again, forcing more bending to come from the lower back instead.
Wow. So daily posture is dictating lifting mechanics, leading to what are the long-term consequences if this pattern continues?
They are cumulative and they're often pretty grim. We've already talked a lot about lumbar disc herniation. That's the big catastrophic failure.
Right.
But even before that, poor posture and the resulting compensatory movement can lead to chronic facet joint irritation.
Facet joints? What are those exactly?
They're the small joints on the back of the spine where the vertebrae connect with each other. They guide movement and provide stability. Think of them like little knuckles.
Okay.
If your posture is constantly leveraging your discs forward and forcing your lumbar spine to move excessively, these facet joints get jammed together, compressed, and irritated over and over again.
Leading to just general low back pain.
Often a very specific, localized ache or sharp pain, especially with extension movements. Chronic inflammation, arthritis in those joints down the line, it's very common.
And tying back to the nerves.
That constant poor positioning, the potential disc bulging, the inflammation around the facet joints, it all increases the risk of sciatic nerve compression.
So sciatica isn't always from a big herniation. It can be from this chronic irritation.
Absolutely. The nerve root can get pinched or irritated by bone spurs from arthritic facet joints, or just by the general inflammation and reduced space caused by years of poor mechanics. It's a slow burn degradation of the whole structure.
Often accelerated by those intermittent heavy deadlifts where the form inevitably breaks down because the underlying structure just isn't prepared.
That's the perfect storm. The baseline weakness meets the high stress event.
Okay, so the message is clear. You cannot isolate your gym time from the other 23 hours of the day.
Uh,
We have to address the posture that we live in.
we absolutely have to.
But fixing posture, it's not about just, standing ramrod straight like a soldier all day, right? That sounds exhausting and unnatural.
No, definitely not. Forced rigidity isn't the answer. It's about restoring function. It's about training the body to find and hold good alignment comfortably, both at rest and, crucially, under load.
So what are the practical things people listen can actually do? What are the fixes, the daily rituals that build a foundation for a safer deadlift?
It has to be foundational, integrated work. First, we must address that stiff thoracic spine. That's priority number one for many people.
Okay, how?
Regular, targeted thoracic mobility work. This isn't optional. Think about things like foam rolling the mid-back, consciously trying to extend over the roller.
Hands behind the head, maybe.
Hands behind the head or across the chest, yeah. Performing cat-cow stretches, really focusing on arching and rounding that mid-back, not just the low back. Doing exercises like kettlebell pullovers or bench T-spine extensions to actively encourage that lost extension.
So unlocking the mid-back takes the compensatory pressure off the low back.
Precisely. It allows the spine to segment its movement properly again.
Okay, mobility first. What's next? We need stability too, right?
Absolutely. Mobility without stability is just floppy.
Yeah.
We need to teach the body how to create and maintain core stiffness on demand.
So to brace properly.
Exactly. Dedicated core stability drills are key. And we're not just talking about crunches for a six-pack. We need to train the core to function as a 360-degree stabilizer.
Creating that intra-abdominal pressure, the IAP you mentioned.
Yes, that natural weightlifting belt your body can create. Proper bracing is not sucking your stomach in towards your spine.
No. What is it then?
It's taking a deep breath, often into the belly and sides, and then actively bracing your abdominal muscles outwards against that breath, like you're preparing to take a punch.
Creating a rigid canister.
A rigid, pressurized canister. This locks down the lumbar spine, protecting it. Often, for heavy lifts, this involves the Valsalva maneuver.
Okay, the Valsalva, holding your breath under tension, that's safe.
When done correctly, and for brief periods during the lift, yes, it's a vital technique for maximizing IAP and spinal stability. It dramatically stiffens the trunk. But you need to learn how to do it right. It's a skill.
And drills to build that bracing capacity.
Things like planks, obviously, but focusing on that outward brace. Side planks? Loaded carries are fantastic farmer's walks. Suitcase carries, they force you to maintain that braced, neutral torso while moving. Bird dogs, dead bugs, anything that challenges core stability while resisting unwanted spinal movement.
Okay, so thoracic mobility, core stability.
Right.
What about the movement pattern itself? The hip hinge. You mentioned treating it like a sacred ritual.
Oh. Yeah, maybe a bit dramatic, but the point is, it needs dedicated practice until it's automatic. It's a fundamental human movement pattern that many people have lost.
So how do we make it a ritual? Just practice hinging.
Practice it daily, unloaded, consciously. The hinge is a motor skill. It requires repetition to groove the neural pathway. A great tool is using a dowel rod or a broomstick.
How does that work?
You hold the dowel vertically along your spine. It needs to maintain contact with 3 points: the back of your head, your thoracic spine, between the shoulder blades, and your sacrum, your tailbone area.
Okay, head, mid-back, tailbone, 3 points of contact.
Then, you practice hinging at the hips, pushing your hips back, letting your torso come forward, while keeping that dowel touching all 3 points.
So if the dowel lifts off your lower back...
You know you're rounding your lumbar spine instead of purely hinging at the hips. If it lifts off your head, you're looking up too much. If it lifts off your tailbone, you're tucking your pelvis under. It's instant feedback.
That's brilliant. It trains the feeling of a neutral spine during the hinge.
Exactly. It builds awareness. Drill that pattern until it's second nature. Then, when you add load with a deadlift, you have a much better chance of defaulting to that safe, efficient movement.
So the hinge becomes the automatic way you bend over to pick anything up.
That's the ideal, yes. Your keys, a grocery bag, or that 500-pound barbell. It's all the same fundamental pattern. Daily hinge practice is maintenance for lifting longevity.
Okay. This has been incredibly detailed. Let's try and synthesize this for everyone listening. We've journeyed through 33 vertebrae, figured out why jelly donuts explode, and seen how sitting at a desk can wreck your deadlift.
Quite the journey.
So the takeaways need to be crystal clear. We've got 4 core directives here for lifting smart based on everything we've discussed.
And the big theme overarching all of them is, treat your body like the incredibly sophisticated high-performance machine it is, not like an indestructible object.
Okay. Directive number 1.
Respect the spine's architecture. Remember, it's not a straight, rigid rod. It's a dynamic column with 3 natural protective curves: cervical, thoracic, lumbar.
And the goal...
Your goal in the deadlift setup, the pull, the lockout, the descent, is to maintain those curves. Keep that neutral alignment under tension. If you lose neutrality, you lose structural integrity. Simple as that.
Okay. Directive 2.
Always deadlift with a neutral spine. This flows directly from the first one. It means actively avoiding that lumbar rounding, that flexion that levers the disc nucleus backward.
And also avoiding excessive arching.
And also avoiding excessive hyperextension,
Yeah.
which can pinch those facet joints we talked about. Neutrality is the sweet spot. It ensures the load stays primarily compressive, lets the big muscles do the work, and minimizes that dangerous shear force on the discs and ligaments.
Got it. Directive 3.
Train your posture daily. This is huge. Your deadlift doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's a direct performance of your daily movement habits and tissue quality.
So what happens outside the gym dictates what happens inside.
Absolutely. You must work on keeping your thoracic spine mobile. You must work on hip flexibility and core stability. Address the imbalances caused by sitting or repetitive movements.
Yeah.
Posture isn't passive. It's an active 24/7 commitment to keeping your structure healthy and ready.
Okay. And the final directive, number 4.
Understand disc mechanics. Remember the jelly donut. Those discs are amazing, but they have rules.
Rule number 1. They like centered compression.
They thrive on centered compression. Load them correctly, respecting that neutral alignment, and they'll handle incredible forces for years. Load them wrong. Bend that credit card repeatedly, and you will force that nucleus towards your nerves.
The consequence being pain, injury, time off.
Exactly. The reward for precision and respect is decades of strong, pain-free lifting. The cost of negligence? Well, it's often acute injury, chronic pain, and potentially surgery. The choice is yours.
The deadlift truly is the king of exercises. It demands respect, it demands technique, it demands total body engagement. But as we've explored today, the real measure of strength in this lift, it isn't just the weight on the bar.
No.
It's the foresight, it's the anatomical understanding, it's the meticulous attention you pay to preserving the integrity of your own spinal structure while you lift that weight.
Well said.
So the final thought, the question for you listening to take away from this deep dive is this. When you're in the gym, doing your accessory work, planning your training, how much of your mental energy is focused purely on, say, making your biceps bigger or hitting a PR?
Versus how much energy is focused on actively training your awareness of your spinal position, on improving your thoracic mobility, on mastering that hip hinge. Because ultimately, your longevity, your ability to keep training hard and stay healthy for years to come, it hinges almost entirely on the quality and consistency of that focus.